So now we're going to talk about the rules for subtracting rational numbers. Many of them are very much like the addition part as far as some of the rules go. So subtracting decimals, you must line up the decimal point, bring it straight down, so very much like addition. Integers, every subtraction problem we are going to rewrite it. The first number we're not going to bother, you're going to add the opposite of the second. And you might have learned this as the change rule. So if we had negative 6 minus 8, the negative 6 stays the same. We're going to add, and the opposite of 8 is negative 8. And then you use your addition rules. And again, fractions, you must have a common denominator. So those are the rules. So again, refer back to this slide or your notes or whatever when you're doing these problems if you get confused. But remember, the add the opposite. That's kind of the biggie here. So in number 1, it is a subtraction problem, so I'm going to add the opposite, and I don't really change it. Sorry, having some technical difficulties here. Well, it's not going to let me write. All right, now it's ready to go. So I'm going to add, and the opposite of 3 is negative 3. So I never bother the first one, add the opposite. My rules of addition say if the signs are the same, I add and keep the sign, so negative 10. Here I add, the opposite of 8 would be negative 8. Signs are different, so I subtract. I got to take 6 away from 8, get 2, keep the sign of the bigger number negative. Add the opposite, so the negative 3 becomes positive. They are both positive, so I add and keep the sign. So pretty simple there, I hope, as long as you remember that add the opposite rule. All right, so now we have a decimal, but we also have negative, so we got to put the two things together. So the first thing I'm going to do is do the add the opposite, so plus negative. I see the signs are the same, so I know I'm going to really want to add these numbers, and I do need to line up the decimal point when I add them, so it's going to look like this. I can fill in with a 0, 7, 12, carry my 1, 3, bring my decimal straight down. And now, notice I didn't put my negative signs in the problem. I go back and look and say, oh, signs are the same, I'm adding, I'm going to keep the sign. So just make sure you get that right in the end. Here I'm going to add the opposite. The signs are different, so I need to subtract, but I want to put the bigger number on top, so the 22.71 will go on top. The 15.8 would go here underneath, lining up the decimal, fill in with a 0 if you want. And do your subtraction. 1 minus 0 is 1. You're going to have to come over here and borrow. 17 minus 8 is 9. Bring that decimal straight down. Have to borrow again. Make it 11 minus 5 is 6. So 6.91. Then I go back and see. Keep the sign of the bigger number. The 22 is positive, so it would be positive 6.91. In fractions, again, I'm going to do the change or add the opposite first, and then I'll find my common denominator. So it's going to become plus negative. And again, if you want to write this problem up and down, I would advise doing that. So my common denominator is 12. So I'm going to put 12 on the bottom. What do I multiply 4 by to get 12? 3. So 3 times negative 3 would be negative 9. What do you do 3 to get 12? Multiply by 4. So I get negative 4. The signs are the same, so I'm adding. I get negative 13 twelfths. So add and keep the sign. And again, it's in lowest terms, so I can leave it that way. In this one, when I go change or add the opposite, I notice that my signs are different. I'm going to have to subtract, so I want to put the 7 3/4 on top, and I'm going to write this one up and down, and 3 1/3 on the bottom. So I do need to find my common denominator, which in this case 4 and 3 both go into 12. What do I do to 3 to get 12 and multiply by 4? So I multiply the numerator of 1 by 4 to get 4. Here what I do to 4 to get 12, multiply by 3. 3 times 3 is 9. And now I can go ahead and subtract. 9 minus 4 is 5 twelfths. And 7 minus 3 is 4. Go back and check. I want to keep the sign of the bigger number, so it is going to be a negative 4 and 5 twelfths. Okay, here's a property. We had the multiplicative inverse. I don't know if we've talked about that yet, but the sum of a number, this is called additive inverse. The sum of a number and its additive inverse, or opposite, is 0. So negative 6 plus 6 is 0. Very simple property, and we've really used it, but it's going to be important when we do equations, kind of, so that'll be important to remember. Let's see if I got anything else here. I do want to go back and remind you about the metric system. So, oops, need to go back. Maybe we'll get there. You need to be learning your metric chart, because there are going to be some of these on the chart or on the test. So, Kelly hurriedly drew monkeys during class Monday. And remember, this would be Leader or Graham. So if I have 0.45 liters, and I want to change it into milliliters. Starting at liter, which would be here, and I'm going to, right here, and I'm going to milliliters, which would be here. Remember, this is a prefix milli, so I'm really going to move it 1, 2, 3. So I take my decimal and I move it 3 places to the right, so it was in front of the 4, so between the 4 and 5, 1, behind the 5, and then over here. So 450 milliliters. So start learning this chart, either kilo, hectodeca, meter, and then decicentimiller, or Kelly hurriedly drew monkeys during class Monday. Something like that that's going to help you.